The mining station Kepler 442b hung in the darkness like a broken jewel, its lights flickering against the void. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the alien ships circle their home like vultures. The hegemony fleet had arrived 3 days ago with a simple message: surrender or die. "Ma'am, incoming transmission," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communications console. His voice cracked slightly. At 19, he was the youngest member of their skeleton crew, barely old enough to serve on a frontier mining operation. Sarah turned away from the viewport. The mining station housed 43 souls, mostly engineers and miners who had volunteered for the 5-year assignment to extract rare minerals from the asteroid belt. They were civilians, not soldiers. They had mining equipment, not weapons. Against 12 hegemony warships, they might as well have been throwing rocks. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of War Commander Thax, his scaled hide gleaming under harsh lighting. The reptilian alien's eyes were cold, calculating. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his flagship, crawling with hegemony officers from a dozen different species. Human colony Kepler 442b. Thax's voice rumbled through the translation matrix. "You have ignored our ultimatum. Surrender now and we will grant you the mercy of quick deaths. Continue to resist and we will make examples of you that will echo across the galaxy." Sarah stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. "War Commander, we are a civilian mining operation. We have no military value. Our families back on Earth don't even know we exist out here." Thax's laugh was like grinding metal. "Precisely why you are perfect. The galaxy must learn that humanity's expansion ends here. Your species spreads like a plague, touching every world, claiming every system. Today we begin the cleansing." The transmission cut off, leaving the control room in silence. Sarah looked around at her crew. Chief Engineer Martinez, a veteran of the terraforming wars. Dr. Kim, the station's medical officer and xenobiologist. Communications Officer Patel, whose 3 kids were waiting for her back on Luna. Mining Supervisor Jackson, who had been working asteroids for 30 years. "Captain," Martinez said quietly, "the reactor's running at 40% capacity. If we push it past safety limits, we might be able to power the mining lasers long enough to damage one of their ships." "Negative," Sarah replied. "That would just prove their point about us being aggressive. We're not going down as the humans who started a war." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "Sarah, my research data contains detailed biological scans of 17 different hegemony species. If Earth scientists could study it, the quantum communicator was destroyed in their first attack." Patel interrupted. "There's no way to transmit anything back to Earth." Rodriguez looked up from his console. "Ma'am, what if we don't fight back? What if we just broadcast?" Sarah frowned. "Broadcast what?" "Everything. Our lives, our stories, who we are. Let the galaxy see that we're not monsters. We're just people trying to make a living out here." The idea hung in the air like a lifeline. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with hope and everything to do with defiance. "Open all channels," she ordered. "Every frequency, every wavelength. If they want to make an example of us, let's make sure it's the right kind of example." The crew moved with sudden purpose. Within minutes, they had jury-rigged a transmission array using the mining equipment's communication systems. Sarah stood before the main camera, knowing that her words would spread across the galaxy, reaching every species, every world within range. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen of the human mining station Kepler 442b. If you're receiving this, it means we're about to die. The hegemony fleet that surrounds us has given us an ultimatum. Surrender for quick deaths, or resist and become an example of what happens to humans who don't know their place." She paused, looking at each of her crew members in turn. They had gathered around her, their faces calm despite the approaching doom. "We are 43 people, miners, engineers, doctors, communication specialists. We came to this asteroid belt to extract minerals that would help build homes for our children. We're not soldiers. We're not conquerors. We're just humans doing what humans do, working hard, hoping for a better tomorrow and taking care of each other." The station shuddered as the hegemony ships moved closer. Warning lights flashed red throughout the control room. "To anyone listening, I want you to know something about humans. We're not special because we're stronger or smarter than other species. We're special because we refuse to let each other face the darkness alone. Every human who has ever lived, from our earliest ancestors to the children being born right now on Earth, is connected by something the hegemony doesn't understand. Sarah looked directly into the camera, her voice growing stronger. When you touch one human, you touch all of us. When you threaten one human, you threaten all of us. And when you kill one human... She smiled, and there was something in that smile that would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. You make enemies of all of us. The transmission continued, broadcasting their names, their stories, their dreams. Rodriguez talked about his plan to become a starship pilot. Dr. Kim shared her research on peaceful coexistence between species. Martinez showed pictures of his grandchildren. Each human became real, became individual, became someone the galaxy could understand. As the hegemony ships powered their weapons, something else was happening across the galaxy. The broadcast was being received, recorded, and retransmitted. Independent traders picked up the signal and spread it to frontier worlds. Sympathetic aliens in the hegemony's own territories secretly shared the transmission. News networks on neutral worlds began reporting the story. By the time War Commander Thax gave the order to fire, billions of beings across the galaxy knew the names and faces of the humans on Kepler 442b. They had seen their humanity, their courage, their refusal to die in silence. The mining station's hull began to glow as energy beams struck it, but the transmission continued, broadcast from multiple redundant sources, carrying the voices of the dying humans to every corner of known space. Sarah's last words, spoken as fire consumed the control room, would become legend. Remember us. Remember that we were here. And remember that every human you meet from now on carries our memory forward. The station died in light and fire, but something had been born in that moment, something that would change everything. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the center of Earth's Unified Defense Command, watching the holographic display that showed the galaxy burning. 3 months had passed since the Kepler 442b massacre, and the universe had not been the same since. The 43 names from that doomed mining station had become a rallying cry that echoed across 100 worlds. Sir, we have confirmed reports of human colonies under attack in the Vega system, Commander Torres reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. The hegemony is moving faster than we anticipated. Webb nodded grimly. The Alien Alliance had declared open war on humanity after the Kepler broadcast had sparked what they called dangerous sympathy among their subject species. 17 different alien races had openly declared support for humanity. 3 hegemony member species had withdrawn from the alliance entirely. Riots had broken out on 42 worlds. What's our response time to Vega? Webb asked. 18 hours at maximum burn, replied Captain Hayes from the tactical station. But sir, if we commit the Third Fleet to Vega, we leave the Luna colonies exposed. Webb studied the display. Red markers showed hegemony fleets advancing on human positions across 3 sectors. It was a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. The aliens had learned from humanity's greatest weakness. They cared too much about each other. Incoming priority transmission from the Vega colonies, Torres announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Colony Governor Lisa Park. Behind her, explosions lit up the sky through the dome's transparent aluminum. Her settlement of 15,000 was under siege by a hegemony fleet twice the size of what had destroyed Kepler 442b. Admiral Webb, Governor Park said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. We've received their ultimatum. Surrender in 6 hours or they begin orbital bombardment of our civilian sectors. Webb felt his jaw clench. Governor, we have ships en route. Hold your position. Park shook her head. Admiral, we both know your fleet can't reach us in time. But that's not why I'm calling. She turned to gesture at something off-screen. Show him. The camera panned to reveal thousands of non-human civilians standing alongside the human colonists. Webb recognized at least 6 different species. Altarians with their crystalline skin, furry Proximan traders, even a group of the usually neutral Andromedans with their distinctive blue skin. They came on their own, Park explained. When news of the hegemony attack reached the surrounding systems, these people chartered ships, abandoned their homes, and came here to stand with us. They said something about remembering 43 names. A young Altarian stepped forward, her crystalline features reflecting the fires burning in the distance. When she spoke, her translated voice carried across the communication link with surprising strength. Admiral Webb of Earth, she said formally. I am Zara Kathan, former citizen of the hegemony world Altair Prime. 3 months ago, my people watched your miners die with dignity. We saw Captain Sarah Chen refuse to surrender her humanity, even in the face of death. Today we choose to stand with humans not because we must, but because we understand now what you represent. Another alien, a massive proximan whose species resembled bipedal bears, stepped forward. The hegemony teaches that survival requires submission. Your Captain Chen taught us that survival requires something else. The courage to stand together when standing alone means defeat. Webb felt something shift in his chest, the same feeling that had been building across the galaxy since the Kepler broadcast. It wasn't just humans anymore. The fight had become something larger. Governor Park, he said finally, patch this transmission to every human fleet in space. Let them see what's happening on Vega. Within minutes, the scene from Vega Colony was being broadcast across the human network. On Luna, crowds gathered in the streets to watch aliens risk their lives for humans they had never met. On Mars, the colonial government voted unanimously to commit their defense fleet to the war effort. On Europa Station, human miners and Proximan engineers worked side by side to convert cargo ships into makeshift warships. The transformation was unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were voluntarily allying not for conquest or trade, but for an idea, the idea that no thinking being should face annihilation alone. "Admiral," Commander Torres called out, her voice filled with amazement. "We're receiving offers of military assistance from 17 different species. The Andromedans are offering their entire merchant marine as supply ships. The Proximans want to share their shield technology. Even the Centauri Collective is asking how they can help." Webb stared at the tactical display as friendly markers began appearing across the galaxy. Independent fleets, merchant vessels converted to warships. Even some defecting hegemony units were changing course to support human colonies under attack. But the most significant change was happening on Earth itself. The planet that had spent decades arguing about resource allocation and colonial rights had unified overnight. Every human settlement, from the ice mines of Pluto to the cloud cities of Venus, was contributing everything they could to the war effort. "Sir," Captain Hayes said quietly, "the Third Fleet reports they're being joined by a Proximan battle group and 6 Altarian cruisers. Combined fleet strength is now sufficient to engage the hegemony force at Vega, with reasonable chance of success." Webb smiled for the first time in 3 months. "Signal all commanders, Operation Sarah Chen is a go. We're not just defending Vega Colony. We're sending a message to the hegemony that their days of ruling through fear are over." As the orders went out across space, something unprecedented began to happen. Human and alien crews worked together on ships designed by completely different technologies. Languages that had never been spoken together before filled communication channels as species learned to coordinate their efforts. The attack on Vega had been intended to break human morale. Instead, it had sparked the first truly galactic alliance based on shared values rather than shared interests. The hegemony had wanted to make an example of humanity. They had succeeded, but not in the way they had intended. The names of the 43 miners from Kepler 442b had become more than a memorial. They had become a promise. Touch one human, and you faced them all. But now it was bigger than that. Touch one human, and you faced everyone who believed in the right to exist without fear. The galaxy was about to learn that some ideas, once released, could never be contained. And the idea that ordinary people could stand against tyranny through simple courage was the most dangerous idea of all. The Battle of Vega system raged for 18 hours and changed the course of galactic history. Commander Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the UES Defiant as human and alien ships fought side by side against the hegemony fleet. The sight would have been impossible to imagine 6 months ago, but now seemed as natural as breathing. "Proximan Battle Group reports successful breach of the enemy's left flank," Lieutenant Singh announced from the communications station. "They're requesting permission to pursue the retreating destroyers." "Granted," Vasquez replied, then opened a channel to the Altarian cruiser Crystalline Hope. "Captain Thanva, your shields are down to 30%. Fall back and let the Centauri fighters cover your retreat." The crystalline alien's translated voice came back immediately. "Negative, Commander Vasquez. The evacuation ships from Vega Colony are still loading civilians. We hold this line until every human child is safe." Vasquez felt the familiar tightness in her chest that had become common since joining the Alliance. These aliens barely knew humanity, yet they were willing to die for human children they had never met. It was humbling and inspiring in equal measure. "Ma'am," Singh called out urgently. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the surface. It's Governor Park." The main screen shifted to show the Vega Colony Command Center. Governor Park looked exhausted but determined, her face streaked with dust from a nearby explosion. Behind her, humans and aliens worked together to coordinate the evacuation. "Commander Vasquez, the last transport is loading now. We've successfully evacuated 93% of the civilian population, including our alien volunteers. But there's something else you need to know." Park gestured to someone off-screen, and a figure stepped into view that made Vasquez's breath catch. It was a hegemony officer, but his uniform had been stripped of rank insignia and his weapons surrendered. "This is Captain Vorth-Ka of the hegemony cruiser Knight's Edge," Park continued. "He surrendered his ship and crew 3 hours ago. He wants to speak with you." The reptilian alien stepped forward, his scaled features showing something Vasquez had never seen from a hegemony officer. "Shame." "Commander of the human fleet," Vorth-Ka said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I have served the hegemony for 40 years. I have conquered 17 worlds and destroyed countless ships, but I will not participate in the slaughter of innocents." Vasquez leaned forward. "What changed your mind, Captain?" 3 months ago, my ship was present at the destruction of your mining station. I watched your Captain Chen die with honor while my war commander laughed. I told myself it was necessary for galactic order." Vorth-Ka's voice cracked. "But then I saw the broadcasts. I saw how your species responded not with hatred, but with determination to protect others. I saw aliens choosing to stand with you because they believed in something greater than fear." The alien officer paused, struggling with words in a language not his own. "My own crew began questioning orders. When we received instructions to target civilian evacuation ships, 16 of my officers refused to obey. They said they had families too, children who deserved to grow up in a galaxy where courage was rewarded, not punished." Behind Vorth-Ka, Vasquez could see other hegemony officers, all looking uncomfortable but resolute. The sight sent shockwaves through her understanding of the war. "How many others?" she asked quietly. 4 more ships in this fleet alone. Across the galaxy, entire units are laying down their weapons rather than continue this madness. The hegemony leadership calls it treachery. We call it awakening. The transmission was interrupted by alarms throughout the human fleet. The massive hegemony flagship had broken through the Allied defensive line and was heading directly for the evacuation ships. "All units converge on the flagship," Vasquez ordered. "We cannot let them reach those transports." But even as the Allied fleet moved to intercept, it was clear they would be too late. The flagship's weapons were already charging, targeting the defenseless civilian ships that carried thousands of humans and aliens. Then something unprecedented happened. The hegemony cruiser, Knight's Edge, Vorth-Ka's former command, positioned itself directly between the flagship and the evacuation ships. The ship's communication system crackled to life, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Flagship Death's Glory, this is the cruiser Knight's Edge. You will not fire on civilian targets while we defend them." War Commander Thax's voice roared across the communication channels. "Knight's Edge, you are committing treason against the hegemony. Stand down immediately or be destroyed." "We stand with the humans," came the calm reply from Knight's Edge. "We remember 43 names, and we will not let more innocents die for your vision of order." What followed was a battle that military historians would study for centuries. Hegemony ships fought other hegemony ships while humans and aliens watched in amazement. The Knight's Edge held off the flagship long enough for the evacuation to complete, though the smaller cruiser was eventually overwhelmed and destroyed. As the debris from Knight's Edge drifted through space, something remarkable happened across the hegemony fleet. Ship after ship began broadcasting the same message. "We remember 43 names." The psychological effect was devastating. War Commander Thax found himself commanding a fleet where nearly half his ships refused to engage civilian targets. Discipline collapsed as crews openly debated orders, and officers chose conscience over command structure. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Singh reported, his voice filled with awe, "the hegemony fleet is withdrawing. They're fighting each other as much as they're fighting us." Commander Vasquez watched the tactical display, as the galaxy's most feared military force tore itself apart. The death of 43 miners had planted a seed of doubt that was now growing into open rebellion. "Signal all evacuation ships," she ordered. "Safe passages confirmed. Welcome to the Alliance." As the last transport cleared Vega's atmosphere, carrying humans and aliens together toward safety, Vasquez realized that the war had fundamentally changed. It was no longer about human survival versus hegemony expansion. It had become a conflict between two completely different visions of civilization. The hegemony represented order through fear, strength through submission, peace through the silence of the defeated. The alliance that was forming around humanity represented something else entirely. Order through cooperation, strength through diversity, peace through the courage to stand together. Captain Sarah Chen and her 42 companions had been dead for 3 months, but their influence was spreading faster than any weapon could travel. They had proven that ordinary people could choose extraordinary courage, and that choice was reshaping the galaxy. The message spreading from ship to ship, world to world, was simple but revolutionary. No one fights alone anymore. Touch one human and face them all. But more than that, touch anyone who stood for the right to exist without fear, and face everyone who shared that belief. The hegemony had created their own worst nightmare, an enemy that grew stronger every time it was attacked, because it was held together not by conquest or control, but by the simple recognition that all thinking beings deserved dignity and protection. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted in ways that could never be undone. 6 months after the Battle of Vega, the galaxy had split into 2 distinct factions. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session on their capital world of Dominion Prime, their chamber filled with angry voices and desperate plans. High Chancellor Korvax, a massive insectoid creature whose species had ruled the hegemony for 3 centuries, watched his empire crumble from within. 17 more systems have declared independence this week, reported Intelligence Director Yalth, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. The human's poison continues to spread. Entire sectors are refusing to acknowledge hegemony authority. "It's not poison," corrected War Commander Thakix, his scarred hide bearing evidence of his recent defeat at Vega. "It's something worse. It's hope." The chamber fell silent. Hope was a concept the hegemony had spent centuries eliminating from their subject species. Hopeful populations were unpredictable, uncontrollable, dangerous to the established order. The human broadcast from their mining station was replayed 14 billion times in the last month alone, Yalth continued. "Every time we destroy one relay station, 3 more appear. They've made martyrs of 43 miners." High Chancellor Korvax's compound eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked hegemony-controlled space shrinking daily. Blue zones showed the human alliance growing not through conquest, but through voluntary membership. Most concerning were the gray zones, hegemony territories in open rebellion, declaring independence and requesting alliance protection. "What of our military response?" Korvax demanded. "Compromised," Thax admitted. 40% of our fleet officers are now considered politically unreliable. We've had 3 more mutinies this week alone. The crew of the battleship Eternal Dominion refused orders to bombard civilian targets on Kepler 186F. When I ordered their arrest, half the fleet defended them. The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in frustration. How did 43 dead humans accomplish what our enemies could not achieve in 3 centuries of warfare? The answer came from an unexpected source. Fleet Admiral Zefka, the hegemony's highest-ranking military officer, rose slowly from his position. His reptilian features were marked by decades of loyal service, making his next words all the more shocking. "Because they showed us what we had forgotten, High Chancellor. They reminded us that we are people, not just tools of conquest." The chamber erupted in angry chittering and roars, but Zefka continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. "For 300 years, we have built our empire on the principle that might makes right, that fear creates order, that the strong must dominate the weak. But the humans proved something different. They proved that ordinary beings can choose to die with dignity rather than live in submission." "Treason," hissed Intelligence Director Yalth. "You speak treason, Admiral." "I speak truth," Zefka replied calmly. "I have served the hegemony for 70 years. I have conquered 41 worlds and killed thousands in the name of order. But I cannot forget the face of that human captain as she died. She was not afraid of us. She pitied us. High Chancellor Korvax rose to his full imposing height. Admiral Zefka, you are relieved of command and sentenced to immediate execution for treason against the state. But when the Chancellor's guards moved to arrest the Admiral, they found their path blocked by dozens of other officers. The chamber had split along invisible lines, with roughly half the hegemony leadership standing with Zefka. You cannot execute half your government, High Chancellor, the Admiral said quietly. The Empire is already broken. The question is whether we acknowledge that fact and try to build something better, or continue to rule over ashes and call it victory. The standoff was interrupted by an emergency communication from the hegemony's early warning network. The main screen activated, showing a young human male in the uniform of the Earth Defense Force. This is Captain James Rodriguez of the United Earth starship Sarah Chen, the human said, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had become humanity's trademark. I am broadcasting to all hegemony worlds and ships. We come not as conquerors, but as liberators. High Chancellor Korvax recognized the surname. This was the younger brother of Lieutenant Rodriguez, the communications officer who had died on Kepler 442b. The family resemblance was unmistakable. My brother Miguel died 6 months ago on a mining station, along with 42 other humans. They died believing that their sacrifice would mean something, that their deaths would show the galaxy a different way to live. Today we honor their memory by offering that different way to you. Behind Captain Rodriguez, the image shifted to show the bridge of the starship Sarah Chen. Humans and aliens worked side by side, their cooperation seamless and natural. The ship itself was clearly of mixed design, incorporating technologies from dozens of different species. To the people of the hegemony, you are not our enemies. You are prisoners of a system that fears your potential, that demands your submission instead of celebrating your contributions. We offer you something your leaders cannot, the choice to be free. The broadcast continued as Captain Rodriguez outlined the Human Alliance's terms. Any hegemony system could declare independence and receive immediate protection. Any hegemony citizen could request asylum and safe passage to Alliance territory. Any hegemony military unit could lay down their weapons and join the Alliance fleet with full honors and integration. We remember 43 names, Rodriguez concluded, his voice echoing across the galaxy. But we also remember that they died believing in something larger than themselves. They believed that every thinking being deserves the chance to live without fear, to contribute according to their abilities, to stand tall instead of bowing down. The transmission ended, leaving the Hegemony Council chamber in stunned silence. Through the viewport, they could see their capital city below, where crowds had gathered in the streets to watch the broadcast on public screens. How many ships answer the humans' call? High Chancellor Korvax asked quietly. War Commander Thax consulted his datapad. Early reports suggest approximately 60% of our fleet has either requested permission to join the Alliance or has simply stopped responding to commands. The Chancellor's compound eyes surveyed the split chamber. Half his government supported continuing the war. The other half wanted to negotiate with the humans. His military was deserting in massive numbers. His subject species were rebelling faster than he could suppress them. The Empire is dead, Admiral Zefka said quietly. The question is whether we let it die with honor, or drag it screaming into the void. Outside the council chambers across the galaxy, the same choice was being made by millions of beings. Some chose to fight for the old order, clinging to the familiar brutality of hegemony rule. Others chose something unprecedented, the hope that former enemies could become allies, that diversity could create strength instead of chaos, that ordinary people could build something extraordinary together. The war was entering its final phase, but it would not end with conquest. It would end with transformation, as an empire built on fear collapsed and something new took its place. The 43 names from Kepler 442b had become the foundation of a revolution that no weapon could stop, because it was fought not with ships and guns, but with the simple, radical idea that everyone deserved to matter. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of the hegemony was ending, and the age of the Alliance was about to begin. The siege of Dominion Prime lasted 96 hours and ended not with bombardment, but with surrender. Admiral Elena Vasquez, now commanding the Alliance fleet, stood on the bridge of the starship Sarah Chen as the hegemony's capital world formally requested terms of capitulation. Around her, Human and alien officers worked together with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Signal from the surface. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Singh, the Sikh officer who had served with distinction throughout the war. High Chancellor Korvax requests safe passage for himself and the remaining Loyalist Council members. Fleet Admiral Zevka confirms that all hegemony military units on world have laid down their arms. Vasquez nodded, studying the tactical display that showed over 300 alliance ships surrounding the hegemony capital. The fleet represented 47 different species, from humans to former hegemony member races to completely independent civilizations that had joined the cause. It was the largest peaceful coalition in galactic history. Grant the Chancellor safe passage, she decided, but only to neutral territory. The War Crimes Tribunals will want to speak with him eventually. The main screen activated, showing the surface of Dominion Prime. The once mighty capital of galactic oppression looked strangely diminished now, its massive monuments to hegemony power seeming hollow and fragile. Citizens filled the streets, many carrying improvised white flags or signs welcoming the Alliance fleet. Captain James Rodriguez materialized beside Vasquez, his young face bearing the weight of responsibility far beyond his years. As the brother of Miguel Rodriguez, one of the 43 martyrs from Kepler 442b, he had become an unofficial symbol of the Alliance cause. "Admiral, we're receiving requests from 17 different refugee organizations, asking for permission to land relief supplies," he reported. Apparently the final months of hegemony rule were difficult for the civilian population. "Approved," Vasquez replied immediately. "And James? Make sure the first ships down carry medical supplies and food synthesizers. Whatever else the hegemony leadership did, we won't let their people suffer for it." It was a philosophy that had defined the Alliance from the beginning. Even as they fought the hegemony military, they had consistently protected hegemony civilians, going so far as to rescue enemy populations from their own government's scorched earth tactics. It was a strategy that had won them more converts than any military victory. "Ma'am," Singh interrupted, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's President Martinez." The screen shifted to show the familiar face of Earth's first elected president, Maria Martinez. The former mining engineer had been chosen to lead humanity specifically because she understood what the war was really about. Ordinary people standing up for their right to exist with dignity. "Admiral Vasquez, congratulations on ending this war," President Martinez said, her voice carrying relief and pride in equal measure. "I wanted you to hear this directly from Earth Command. The Galactic Reconstruction Council has been formally established. 49 species have agreed to participate in building whatever comes next." Behind President Martinez, Vasquez could see representatives from dozens of alien species, all working together in what had once been the United Nations building. The sight still seemed miraculous even after months of similar cooperation throughout the Alliance. "What are our next orders, Madam President?" Vasquez asked. "Your orders, Admiral, are to come home. All of you. Every human, every alien, every being who fought in this war deserves to see the peace they helped build." The transmission ended, but the implications hung in the air. The war was truly over, but the work of building something better was just beginning. "All ships prepare for departure," Vasquez ordered. "Set course for Earth, we're going home." As the massive Alliance fleet began its journey back to Sol System, Captain Rodriguez found himself standing at the viewport, watching Dominion Prime shrink behind them. The world that had ruled the galaxy through fear for 3 centuries was now just another planet, asking for help to rebuild. "Penny for your thoughts, James?" Vasquez asked, joining him at the observation deck. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "My brother Miguel used to say that every human who died away from Earth carried a piece of home with them. He said that when humans died, they didn't really die alone, because they carried the memory of everyone they'd ever loved." He turned to face the Admiral, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I think he was right, but not in the way he meant. Miguel and the others didn't just carry human memories with them when they died. They planted something new, something that grew into all of this." He gestured at the mixed species crew around them. "They proved that the best parts of humanity aren't just human anymore." Vasquez followed his gaze to see the bridge crew, humans working alongside Proximans, Altarians collaborating with former hegemony species. even some of the enigmatic Andromedans contributing their unique perspectives to navigation problems. They had become something unprecedented, a truly integrated galactic society. The 43 names from Kepler 442b, Rodriguez continued, they're not just a human memorial anymore. They belong to everyone who believes that ordinary people can choose to do extraordinary things when it matters. 3 days later, the Alliance fleet arrived at Earth to find Sol system transformed. Orbital stations that had once been purely human now hosted delegates from across the galaxy. Luna City had expanded to accommodate alien refugees who had requested asylum. Mars was building new cities designed specifically for multi-species colonization. But the most remarkable change was philosophical. Humanity had gone to war to protect themselves and had emerged as the guardians of a galactic community. The species that had once been seen as aggressive and expansionist had become the glue holding together dozens of civilizations that had never trusted each other before. The memorial service for the Kepler 442b 43 was held in Earth's orbit, with representatives from every Alliance species attending. Captain Sarah Chen's final transmission was replayed one more time, but now her words carried additional weight. She had not just been speaking for humanity. She had been speaking for everyone who refused to face darkness alone. Touch one human, and the whole species rises, President Martinez said as the ceremony concluded. But we've learned something even more important. Touch anyone in our alliance, and all of us rise together. The 43 showed us that courage is contagious, that dignity is universal, and that no one has to die alone. As the memorial ended and the gathered fleets began dispersing to their home systems, something unprecedented was taking shape across the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, dozens of species were working together not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The age of empire had ended, and the age of cooperation had begun. The 43 miners from Kepler 442b had been dead for almost a year, but their legacy was just beginning. They had touched the galaxy with their courage, and the galaxy had risen in response. The darkness that had ruled through fear was ending, replaced by something that shone brighter than any star. The light of beings choosing to stand together. 5 years after the end of the Hegemony War, Captain James Rodriguez stood in the memorial garden on Kepler 442b, watching the sunrise paint the asteroid's artificial atmosphere in shades of gold and amber. The mining station had been rebuilt as a monument and research facility, but more importantly, it had become a symbol of something humanity had given to the galaxy, the courage to hope. The dedication ceremony begins in 1 hour, Captain. His aide, a young Altarian named Kethva Than, informed him. Her crystalline features reflected the morning light as she reviewed the day's schedule on her datapad. Representatives from 83 different species have confirmed attendance. Rodriguez nodded, still amazed by how normal such diversity had become. Kethva was the daughter of Captain Zara Kathan, the Altarian who had been among the first aliens to stand with humanity during the siege of Vega Colony. The younger generation had grown up in a galaxy where cooperation between species was the norm, rather than the exception. Any word from the deep space expedition? He asked. The starship Miguel Rodriguez reports successful first contact with the Spiral Arm Confederation. Kethva replied, her translated voice carrying excitement. Preliminary discussions suggest they're interested in joining the Galactic Alliance. Captain Chen sends her regards and says the 43 names continue to open doors even in uncharted space. Rodriguez smiled at the mention of Captain Lisa Chen, Sarah Chen's younger sister, who had dedicated her life to exploring beyond known space and spreading the Alliance's message of cooperation to distant civilizations. The Chen family had become legendary across the galaxy, their names synonymous with courage and exploration. Sir, Kethva continued, there's something else. The former hegemony territories have completed their reconstruction projects ahead of schedule. The Dominion Prime Memorial University graduated its first class of multi-species engineers yesterday. Dean Zefka specifically requested that I thank you for the Alliance's continued support. The transformation of former hegemony worlds had been one of the Alliance's greatest achievements. Rather than seeking revenge, the former enemies had worked together to rebuild worlds damaged by centuries of oppressive rule. Dominion Prime itself had become a center of learning, its former monuments to conquest replaced by libraries and research facilities. Rodriguez made his way through the memorial garden, past the 43 crystalline monuments that bore the names and faces of the miners who had died here. Each monument was unique, crafted by artisans from different Alliance species to represent the universal nature of courage and sacrifice. Sarah Chen's monument stood at the center, her final words etched in over 100 different languages. Touch one human, and the whole species rises. They don't die alone. But beneath those famous words was a newer inscription, added by unanimous vote of the Galactic Alliance Council. Touch anyone who stands for freedom, and all free beings rise together. None of us die alone. The dedication ceremony began with representatives from across the galaxy, gathering in the rebuilt station's main hall. Rodriguez watched as beings who had once been mortal enemies worked together to honor the dead and celebrate the peace their sacrifice had made possible. Former High Chancellor Korvax, now a reformed advocate for interspecies cooperation, spoke first. The massive insectoid had spent 3 years in rehabilitation centers, learning to overcome centuries of conditioning that had taught him to see other species as threats rather than potential allies. 5 years ago, I ordered the destruction of this station because I believed that fear was the only force strong enough to maintain galactic order, Korvax admitted, his translated voice heavy with remorse. The 43 humans who died here proved me wrong. They showed the galaxy that hope is stronger than fear, that love is more powerful than hatred, and that ordinary beings can choose to become extraordinary when the moment demands it. President Martinez, now in her second term leading Earth's government, stepped forward to address the assembly. Behind her stood representatives from the Galactic Alliance Council, including humans, Proximans, Altarians, reformed hegemony species, and dozens of others who had joined the Alliance over the past 5 years. We gather here today not just to remember the dead, but to celebrate the living, she said, her voice carrying across the crowded hall and broadcasting to billions of beings across the galaxy. The 43 miners who died on this station started something that has grown beyond any of our wildest dreams. She gestured to the mixed species crowd around her. Look around this room. See humans and Proximans working together on terraforming projects. Watch Altarians and former hegemony engineers collaborating on new technologies. Observe beings from 100 different worlds choosing cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear. Rodriguez felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came whenever he truly grasped the magnitude of what had been accomplished. His brother Miguel had died believing in human dignity. That belief had grown into something universal. The recognition that all intelligent life deserved respect, protection, and the chance to contribute to something larger than themselves. The Galactic Alliance now encompasses over 200 star systems and 87 different species. President Martinez continued. We have established colonies on worlds that were once battlefields. We have built cities where former enemies now raise their children together. We have created a civilization based not on conquest or submission, but on the radical idea that diversity makes us stronger. The ceremony continued with the unveiling of the new Deep Space Exploration Initiative, a joint project involving 30 different species designed to carry the Alliance's message of cooperation to distant galaxies. The flagship of this expedition would be the starship Sarah Chen II, crewed by beings from across the Alliance and equipped with technologies that no single species could have developed alone. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Rodriguez found himself alone with the memorial to his brother Miguel. The young communications officer's face smiled down from the crystalline monument, frozen in time but somehow still radiating the enthusiasm and hope that had characterized his short life. You did it, Miguel, Rodriguez whispered. You and the others. You touched the galaxy with your courage, and the whole galaxy rose in response. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of the celebration, humans laughing with Proximans, Altarian children playing with young beings from a dozen different species, former enemies sharing meals and stories. It was the sound of a galaxy that had learned to choose hope over fear. Kethva approached quietly, her crystalline features reflecting the warm light of the memorial hall. Captain Rodriguez, the Deep Space Fleet is ready for departure. Captain Chen requests permission to begin the journey to the Spiral Arm Confederation. Rodriguez nodded, thinking about the message that would soon spread to distant stars, that somewhere in a small corner of the galaxy, ordinary people had chosen to stand together against darkness and had discovered that their light was strong enough to illuminate the universe. Permission granted, he said, Tell Captain Chen to carry our hopes to the stars. Tell her that the 43 names go with her, and that wherever she travels, she doesn't go alone. As the Deep Space Fleet departed Kepler 442b, carrying the Alliance's message to unknown worlds, Rodriguez remained in the Memorial Garden. The stars overhead were no longer points of light separated by vast emptiness. They were homes connected by invisible threads of friendship, cooperation, and shared hope. The 43 miners had touched one human, and the whole species had risen. But in rising, humanity had lifted up the galaxy itself, proving that courage was contagious, that dignity was universal, and that no one had to face the darkness alone. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun, and it had all started with 43 people who chose to die with honor rather than live in fear. Their names would be remembered as long as thinking beings looked up at the stars and dreamed of something better.